Let me guess. You saw the title, figured out what this video would most likely be about, and immediately went with the because her seasons incomparable and diamonds weren't in love with the men she was trying to match them with as your answer. Right? Right? But what if I told you that there was something else that you missed? Because you see, for the longest time, I too belonged to the camp that the reason why Queen Charlotte's matches all failed is because she never quite understood what the young ladies she was trying to match up wanted. They craved and desired love, whether it was Daphne Bridgerton, who had already had her heart, and other body parts captured by Simon Bassett and so couldn't give any attention to poor Prince Frederick, or Francesca Bridgerton, who, to be quite fair to her, hadn't had her heart bequeathed to someone else by the time Queen Charlotte first introduced her to Lord Samadani, but who soon afterwards fell for John Sterling. And no, I am not putting Edwina Sharma in this list because, to be fair, Queen Charlotte wasn't trying to actively matchmake her with Anthony Bridgerton like she did with the other matches. Nope. Anthony did that all on his own. Silly nitwit. But as I was saying, for the longest time, I was convinced that the reason why none of the matches worked out was because Queen Charlotte didn't prioritize love like the young ladies did. That instead, what she looked at was their compatibility and the fact that these matches would provide the ladies with a life of comfort and status befitting the young women that she had hand-selected herself as being of utmost good pedigree and deserving of only the best that the season had to offer in a match. However, having had the thought rolling in my head for a while, I have come to the realization that I was quite wrong in that process because you see, Charlotte prioritizes love. She believes that love is absolute. I mean, why wouldn't she? She's utterly besotted with her George, which is why her heart breaks every time his memories degrade further and she loses even more of him. And before you say that it doesn't make sense that Queen Charlotte clearly isn't for love, considering that wasn't what she said to Simon when she approved of Simon's plea to her to let he and Daphne marry. I would like you to think again on what Simon said. He admitted that they removed romance from the equation when they spent their time together, but in removing it, he and Daphne found something greater. And then he went on to basically break down what it feels like to be in love with your best friend, someone with whom conversation would always be easy, whose laughter brings you joy, whose company you love spending time with. If Simon had described his love for Daphne in that scene in the stereotypical way of Daphne taking his breath away, of his heart stuttering to a stop, of not being able to think about anyone else but her, Queen Charlotte might most likely have waved it off. Because yes, she was miffed that Daphne didn't choose her nephew, but she wasn't about to force Daphne to marry Frederick. No. So no matter what Simon would have said to her in that throne room, she wouldn't have objected to their marriage. What he was making the argument for, remember, was for her to let them marry quickly, since only he and Daphne, and to some extent the rest of the Bridgertons and Lady Danbury, had an idea of the ticking time bomb that was Cressida's knowledge of what had gone on in the gardens the previous night. So as I was saying, if Simon had given her the stereotypical description of love, which is more the heat of attraction and which Charlotte knows is most likely not long-lasting, she would have been dismissive of it. But instead, what he paints is a picture of love like she recognizes, knows to the depths of her bones, because she has lived it and breathed it with a man who she loses every single day through no fault of his at all, and who only gives her brief moments of lucidity that she cherishes. That to her is what love is, the one that endures, that isn't just about instant attraction. Because remember how her story with George starts? They had an arranged marriage. They never met each other until moments before their wedding, and prior to that, she was making plans to escape, and would have if it was anyone else who had showed up and had been willing to help her run away from that orchard. Her love with and for George was built brick by brick with moments they spent with each other, with secrets they shared and vulnerabilities they let each other see. They had to earn their love bit by bit. And to her, that is why their love endures. It is why she's still devoted, waiting for the crumbs of his lucidity that she can get. And she knows that a love like that isn't tied to the temporary heads in cloud moments that a lot of the young girls of the ton imagine love should be, but to something that you arrive together at with someone who matches you on a fundamental level. So when you keep that in mind and look at the matches that she tried to set up for Daphne and Francesca, it makes a bit more sense, because let's really consider it. If Simon wasn't a factor, if he didn't exist, if say his father had died much later or much earlier, and so he had never made his way to Lady Danbury's ball, which was the opening ball of the season and the first time Daphne was out in society after her presentation to the Queen, if Simon had come much later and Daphne had got to meet Prince Frederick without the ghost of her attraction and desire for Simon hanging over her head, what's not to say that she wouldn't have ended up with the prince? Is everything that would have resulted in a good match with her. He's kind, he's courteous, he's titled, he adores her. And all her training as the eldest daughter of a viscounty would have come to bear in being a launching pad for her training as a princess. And she would have been able to perform the second part of her responsibility, which is having attained the highest possible match that would have been beneficial for her younger sisters, whose prospects would grow exponentially now that she's matched well. And please don't say that that wasn't a factor for Daphne, as she admits that to Eloise herself and lets her sister know that that is part of what worries her about the responsibility that is solely hers to bear as the eldest. If we consider things from Queen Charlotte's perspective, the seeds are there to eventually turn to the type of enduring love that she has with George. She probably believes that he would have endured even more than her love, since Frederick isn't dealing with the same mental health issues that George is. He is not on the verge of losing his mind. And with Lord Samadani, I think a lot of the time when the fandom dismisses the match between Francesca and him, they do so by virtue of his desire to have 8 kids and point out that Fran is justifiably horrified at the thought. Now, I don't blame my poor baby girl, because 8 kids is a lot. But at the same time, I think people tend to ignore Charlotte's point of view in all of this. To her, Francesca and Lord Samadani grew up with the same number of siblings. As kids born from large families, she most likely believes that they would have a ton in common and a lot to talk about and relate to. It is not uncommon for people from large families to want to keep the tradition going, and Queen Charlotte probably doesn't think that Francesca would have a problem with that. Remember, Charlotte herself had 15 kids with George, and ultimately, Gregory Bridgerton continues the Bridgerton tradition of being very, very fertile, as he and Lucy have 9 kids together. That is one higher than his mother, just putting it out there. But most importantly, Lord Samadani is a lover of the arts. He loves reading, is from Vienna, a city famed for its architecture, art and music, specifically classical music. I mean, Mozart and Beethoven considered the city home. To Charlotte, Vienna is a city that has all the romanticism that a young girl like Fran would love, and has the music that is what led to Fran catching her eye in the first place. Add the fact that Lord Samadani is a marquis, which is yet another fructitious match in her book, a match that would have yet again benefited the other Bridgerton girls. To Queen Charlotte, she's weighed all the facts and arrived at the belief that the stage is set for a potential love in Francesca's future. One that would be built on a mutual interest in similar hobbies, all taking place in a city that she believes that Fran would most likely love. Like I said earlier, Queen Charlotte does prioritize love. The only problem is that her love and the way she views it, the color, the shape of it, is very different from what her matches desire and how they want their love to be and come to be. And that is why said matches always fail. It's about timing. I think stating that the reason why Charlotte has so far failed in every attempt at matchmaking on the show is because she doesn't choose love and instead focuses on the title of the men she's pushing is very unfair to her, because ideally what she is doing is creating a situation where she believes that the couples would eventually arrive at a place of love when given time and space, like she had with George. Her error, however, has been her inability to see that love does come in different forms, that people want different things, and also, and this is the most important by the way, you cannot accurately gauge or guess the human heart, nor can you time anything perfectly. Everyone is different and wants different things, and even if everything is perfectly aligned, there is always a possibility that there would be one more factor that the person considers the most important that you totally missed. For Daphne, is the burning passion she felt with Simon. For Francesca, it's the peace and serenity that John offers her, and she most certainly will not be getting with Lord Samadani and his dream of 8 kids. It will be interesting to see if this is a running gag that Bridgerton as a show continues to run with, if we're about to get yet another season of a failed pairing with a diamond of the season that doesn't give the result that Queen Charlotte wants, and instead serves the function of pushing one half of the couple towards the person that they actually want to be with. I hope not, however. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that one of 3 things happens in season 4. 1. Either Queen Charlotte finally lets go of all the matchmaking attempts and puts her time to better use, or 2, she actually successfully matches the season's diamond, which would finally be a feather in a cap that I would personally be happy for her about, or 3, she reaches a point of realization on why her matches have been a failure so far. Of course, this is just me and my hope for the season with regards to Queen Charlotte and the show's incessant need to have her try and fail at matchmaking her diamonds. Maybe you hope for something different, or just have different thoughts in general about what I've just said, or maybe you agree with me. Whatever the case, please share your thoughts in the comments. Like this video if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet. Share this video if you want. Support me on Patreon if you can. If you can't, however, do consider checking out my other channels. One of them is my gaming channel and the other is for my ASMR content. I have them linked in the description bar if you would like to check them out. Whichever the case may be, however, I will see you tomorrow with a new video. Until then, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.